Hi guys, so I'm going to be doing something today that I've been dying to do for a really long time, and for whatever reason haven't got around to doing it. And I'm going to do a tour of all of our edible perennials. They are, as you know, the category of plant that gets me most excited because they're the plant that just comes back every year and just gives you food every year. So we've got all sorts going on around the property, and some more exciting than others and some not quite ready yet. Some are still very young plants, but we're going to walk around and just show you them all. So we're starting in our back garden. This is at the rear of our kitchen. It's a garden I personally very rarely come out into. I don't have a lot to do with this space, but we do have here this olive tree. Now, I don't know how much you know about olive trees, but the actual process of harvesting and preparing olives is quite lengthy and difficult. So it's something I'm definitely going to play with when we start getting olives. But this here I actually got from Free Cycle. Someone was giving it away. It was in a pot. It had outgrown its pot. It was struggling, and I transplanted it here about 1.5 years ago. So it's had, whenever I transplant an established plant, particularly a tree, I always think that the first year you kind of lose that year. That year, sometimes they'll actually decrease in size and vigor, but usually they'll just stagnate. I always feel it takes a year for them to kind of get over the shock of changing. So this is its second year it's in now, and it is starting to show signs of happiness, which is what we like. And then just down here on the floor next to it, we have got 2 huge rhubarb plants. Now, these were here when we moved in, so they are a boon. Really happy to have them here. We sell quite a bit of rhubarb at the side of the road. It's surprising how expensive it is in the shops, and it's really easy to grow. We don't touch it. All we do is we throw a little bit of manure or some kind of compost around the roots of it every year, and that's it. And then down here we have something else that was here when we got here, and I didn't even discover it until fairly recently, and that is some horseradish. See this horseradish plant? So I've already made some horseradish sauce from this, which I've done a video on and shown you how to do. It's really easy. Horseradish will spread. It will absolutely spread. So I don't know how long it's been here. My guess is not that long because it's not spread very much, but it will. So we're going to have to harvest and make horseradish from that plant. Along here we've got what will be another perennial bed. We've got chamomile down here and strawberries. These strawberries do really well. And then mint. Mint's another one you've got to watch because it will take over the whole garden. But that's what we have out in this garden. Oh, with one last one to show you, and that is a beautiful edible sweet cherry tree. We had our first cherries off it this year, just a handful. We planted it last year. Well, could have even been the year before, but I bought that as a birthday present for my wife, who loves cherries, adores cherries. Now we come through the gate and we're into what we would normally call the kitchen garden. And this is where our little pekins live that you will have seen quite a few times. And it contains our 3 most established fruit trees. You can see the pear tree at the back there, which is still laden with pears. We've harvested a crazy amount of pears off it this year already. This one here, which fruits slightly earlier, this is another pear tree. This is all gone. All the pears have dropped. And then this is our plum tree, which is a little bit worse for wear, as you can see. It's actually a really, really heavy fruiter. Even though it looks like it's struggling, there is certainly some damage on it. Some of it is really healthy. So what we're actually going to do, I'm going to try and tip layer this tree this year, and I'm going to try and propagate a new one from it. But that's 2 pears and a plum tree in this space. And then just across the lawn we have our herb spiral. Now in here we have all sorts of perennial herbs. We've got, you can see from a distance, we've got sage. We've got some more mint that'll be growing in a pot so it doesn't spread. We've got chives. We've got a weed at the front which needs pulling out. This is another area of the garden which is overdue for a little bit of TLC. It doesn't actually help that the chickens come and mess over here, quite a lot. We've got rosemary at the top there, lavender, thyme. This is thyme, rosemary. We've got fennel and dill. And as I say, a fair few weeds, but this is all perennial herbs that we do use in the garden, in the kitchen rather. We do use these in the kitchen. So this is something I built, only took me a little while. I'll do a whole video on herb spirals because they're super simple to build and they're super functional. Nothing else perennial in this space, so we'll move on and we'll just take a quick stop just outside the kitchen door, because here we have something called Inca berries, also known as ground cherries, I believe. Now, these are frost tender. They are a perennial plant, but not in our climate. And the reason they're in pots is because we are going to try and perennialize them here. We're going to take them in the house. Whether that works or not, who knows, but it's certainly our goal. These were given to us, actually. These were for sale. Lots and lots of them were for sale outside one of the fruit and vegetable shops that I go to collect our fruit and veg, and the lady who works there very kindly offered to give me a couple, and I said, well, thank you very much, not one to look a gift horse in the mouth. Now, of course, it's late September, so you must remember this is the tail end of our busiest time. So there are lots of areas in our garden that look a lot worse than they might usually. So it's around this time of year that we free up some of our time to deal with the more ornamental parts of our garden, like the one we're in now. Anyway, that's by the by. Behind me, we have some bamboo. Now, bamboo shoots are completely edible, and they are obviously a hardy perennial. They're super easy to grow. We use them for more than just the shoots. We use them to make our drinking straws in the house. I use them to make little straws that I use when I tap the maple trees, and I also obviously use them for our canes for growing our climbers, but they are also an edible. And then back there behind that smoke bush, that large green bush, is a bay tree, so we don't need to buy bay leaves in the shop, quite clearly. Oh, also here, this is a log that has been impregnated with oyster mushrooms. So not strictly an edible perennial, but hopefully this will start fruiting with oyster mushrooms at some point this year. Although I'm not, when I first got them, we just moved here and I didn't really know the area very well. I'm much less concerned now with creating our own mushrooms here because I've found lots and lots locally. So I think we're fine for mushrooms from now until forever, really. Next up, and this is one of our main perennial beds, and I have shared this one with you before, but what we have here is our asparagus bed, which I am so excited about next year. We're going to have loads of asparagus. We have got some berries back there. I'm trying to remember what type they were. I'll probably have to check the label. They are goji berries. So these are goji berries, this plant. There's two plants of goji berries in there. And as you can see, it's a better view of some of our asparagus plants. We have got our globe artichokes down here, our raspberries just here, and we're going to be extending our raspberry patch to take over this whole bed here where we had corn growing this year. And obviously our grapevine. You'll remember from previous videos, this grapevine we found in the ground, and it was all overgrown, covered in weeds and brambles. And look, the grapes are starting to ripen. I'm so excited. If anyone's got any tips for using these sort of small grapes which have large pips, then please do get in touch, because I am all ears. Out here we've got more rosemary and lavender in pots in front of the polytunnel there. We've got a huge strawberry patch, and then moving up through here we've got another perennial bed at the top of our vegetable patch. So we've got this rainbow chard that we hope to be growing as a perennial. We've got our Egyptian walking onions, which are starting to colonize this whole bed. You see, I've planted them through this whole bed. When these courgettes come out, this whole bed will be Egyptian walking onions. And then at the back, we've got our runner beans, which again, I'm going to be growing as a perennial. Now here we also have, if you look up those tall trees there, are quince. So we have lots and lots of quince. However, we don't harvest any of those, or we haven't done this year. They have been feed for the pigs, among other things. So we've got quince there, and then up this alley, we've got all sorts of wild edibles growing in our garden. We've got lots of sloes, as you can see, and we've also got a couple of elder trees. So we've got elderflowers and elderberries growing up this alley, along with just scattered throughout all of the wilder parts of our garden, including a lot of our boundaries. Of course, we've got the ubiquitous blackberry, which is everywhere. There's a fair amount of what I would normally deem to be wild edibles, and wow, look at this. If you want a sign that summer is over, check out these trees. These trees are telling me it's autumn. Wow. Such a stark contrast compared to just a week ago. Wow. So also here we have 3 hazels that I have planted. These will give us hazelnuts, as well as being able to coppice the wood. And just next to them, we have probably my favourite tree on the property, and this is our walnut tree, which does fruit. It hasn't fruited very much this year. There were probably only 5 or 6 nuts on it this year, but last year it was prolific. There were probably a couple of hundred on that last year. Now we're moving up towards our food forest, or what will be the food forest, and this is more an area that I've planted with more long-term edible perennials. So this here is an apricot. The variety is called tomcot, which is supposed to be really, really good in our climate. Over here we have a conference pear. All of this area again is on the list for being in need of a good weed and just a bit of care. I haven't been able to give it the care and attention it deserves. We've got a really lovely established apple tree here. This is my wife's favourite apple tree in the property, and in this wood here there's probably 5 or 6 apple trees. I won't bother showing you them all individually, but up through that wood we have several. I brought with me a little folder because I've kept track of what I've got planted and where. This is a bush called a honeyberry. I'm very excited, as the berries are supposed to be delicious. So we have the honeyberry there. This is a plum tree here. We have a fig here, which is doing stonkingly well. This was a tiny little plant when we got it. Then we have an apple tree just here. Over here, gooseberries. Now I'm slowly thinning the wood just behind it to try and help it with some light so that it can do a bit better. And then over here, although it looks like it might have actually died, yes, we're going to have to reattempt this. We did have a kiwi here, a kiwi variety called Jenny, which is supposed to be able to cope with our climate, but I might have to try again. I'm really excited to grow some kiwis. I'm a little bit disappointed that's gone. It struggled for 2 years. So the things that haven't struggled though are these figs. I'm going to need to open this up, and this winter I will rebuild this cage a lot bigger because it obviously needs some more space. Then over here, just as a placeholder really, I didn't know where to put them, so just until I had time to transplant them down into our other patch, we've got a few raspberry canes that are being swamped out by weeds, and some black currants which are also being swamped out by this horrible vineweed that we're going to have to deal with. Again, there's a big long list of things that I do need to deal with now that we're getting a bit more time. And then a couple more apple trees that you can see back there in different states. This is another honeyberry plant just here, and here we have a mulberry bush, or what will be a mulberry bush. And then as we near the top of this little section, we have an almond tree, which has done really well this year. All this is new growth. So I'm really happy with the almond tree. And then another mulberry bush up in the top here. Now these mulberry bushes were both almost eaten down to the floor by deer or rabbits or both. So they've done really well actually to survive and come back. Now there's just one more area I wanted to show you. We're going to walk round to it now, but before we leave here, these maple trees I tap every year for the sap, and we make maple syrup. So whether they count as an edible perennial, I shall leave that to your judgment. Now there's lots and lots of, as I mentioned, wild edibles, things like garlic mustard and that kind of thing, chickweed, that are just growing as weeds. Obviously nettles. I'm not really sharing all of those with you. I think it kind of goes without saying that we're going to have a lot of those kind of things here because of the amount of wild space we have. But the last bit that I wanted to show you, and it's something that I actually planted, was these Jerusalem artichokes. These plants here. So they're Jerusalem artichokes. They grow like potatoes. And as anyone that's grown them will tell you, once you've got them, you can't get rid of them. They just spread. So that's why I put them up here. Basically, this area gets mowed. So we just mow fairly close to the fence, not terribly close to the fence, but just enough to get vehicles through. And that's going to stop the growth from spreading this way. I'm quite happy for the growth to spread that way into the wood, because that's why I planted them there. The idea will be that the pigs that we have in there can snuffle around for the tubers, which are the part you eat, and it's just a little bit of free food for them. And then obviously when we start getting quite a lot out here, we'll be harvesting them ourselves as well. I do really, really like Jerusalem artichoke. So there you go. That's our tour of our edible perennials. I hope you enjoyed that. Please do let me know if I'm so passionate about edible perennials. So if there's any that you're thinking of that I'm not growing, please let me know. I'm desperate to grow as many as I can, particularly ones that fill the space that would otherwise be used for annual vegetables. So things like our Egyptian onions, they're just amazing. And our runner beans that we're going to grow as perennials, they're amazing because that replaces a lot of the work involved in our annual vegetable bed. So if you can think of any edible perennials that I'm not currently growing, and I should be, then please do let me know. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channel for content like this. We release new videos almost every day, and press that like button. Thanks for watching, and I will speak to you soon.